What's going on, everyone? I am Jeff St. Pierre, and this is episode 174 of the Adult Education Podcast. Today, we're going to hit the slopes and talk about Olympic snowboarding with Snowboarder Magazine correspondent Josh Sullivan. Now, I get super amped up about the Olympics. Winter, summer, it doesn't matter. I watch hours of coverage of events that I don't even care about because I just love the competition. I enjoy that the Olympics are a stage for athletes from across the world to shine. And it's the athletes that don't always get the TV time, right? We're not talking about basketball players or the NFL. It's skaters, it's skiers, it's curlers. But the events that I get drawn to the most, they involved snowboarding. So I grew up in New Hampshire, and I found snowboarding around freshman year of high school when a friend invited me to join him at a local hill. I caught the bug instantly. While I never got on the mountains as much as I would have liked to, I always enjoyed it. My time learning how to ride sort of coincided with the launch of Winter X Games. I was able to see people like myself, though of course much better at the sport than I was, flying through the air and testing the limits of reality. Then came the Winter Olympics in 1998, the first year that snowboarding made the big show. I watched damn near all of the Olympic snowboarding coverage this year. Unfortunately, there were some weather issues in Italy that seemed to change up the events for the negative. The world's best athletes weren't landing signature tricks, and they were struggling to complete their runs. As a fan, I thought something was up, and I wasn't the only one. Josh Sullivan is a correspondent for Snowboarder Magazine. Shortly after the women's slopestyle event, he published an article titled Opinion: The Olympic Slopestyle Women Deserve Better. After reading it, I reached out to see if he'd like to come on the show and discuss further. Thankfully, Josh agreed, so I hope you enjoy our conversation.
Is my background okay?
Yeah, it's fine with me as long as it's fine with you. I don't care. Yeah. I just moved mine around. I just switched. I used to have the desk the other way around, and I had this like sheet that I had behind me just to block the chaos of my basement. And my wife was like, "You look like you're recording your conversations in an insane asylum. You should probably like turn things around a little bit so you have some sort of decoration behind you."
I've only used Riverside one other time, and it was for NPR, and they were super picky.
Okay.
So I did not go through all the lengths I did with them, so I just wanted to make sure it was cool.
Well, here it is. Lucky for you, I am not the same as NPR, so we are good to go.
Cool.
Well, Josh, I want to welcome you in, so thank you so much again for your time. Josh Sullivan, you are a writer for Snowboarder Magazine. Josh, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into Snowboarder Magazine?
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Jeff. Very stoked to be on here. I've been a snowboarder most of my life. I graduated from college with a journalism degree, went like more of the traditional news route, worked for newspapers. I was a crime reporter in Texas. I was worked for a sports editor for a small local newspaper in Massachusetts. I worked for the local NBC station in Massachusetts, which is where I grew up, and moved to North Carolina for a job with the public radio station here. Some circumstances, without getting too in the weeds, like I was hired as a temp. And until I am now full-time permanent, but until that happened, I needed some money on the side. And we can get into this later, but my friends always joke about skinomics and how like you should try to never pay full price to go ride your skis or your snowboard. And so I figured I'd get a job in the industry that would like help me do that. Wrote for this local blog down here. It's called Ski Southeast, and then kind of was able to turn that into a role with Snowboarder Mag. I've been here for 2 years now. Super fortunate to be here. It's been a dream. It was delivered to my college house. I read it growing up, grabbing it from our local board shops. So it's a little surreal sometimes, but it's been awesome. It's been great so far.
So we grew up in similar areas. Where in Massachusetts are you from?
Yeah, I'm from the New Bedford area. I grew up in Dartmouth, Mass. Pretty close to, there's a bunch of towns that kind of touch each other. I always would say like you could leave Dartmouth, run into New Bedford, Freetown, Fall River, and back to Dartmouth if you were in shape enough, and it wouldn't be too big of a run, you know?
Yeah, my grandfather grew up in New Bedford before moving to New Hampshire, and I grew up in Salem, New Hampshire, so we're not terribly far away from each other in that sort of ecosystem. And I saw in your Snowboarder Magazine profile that you used to ride at Pat's Peak in Henniker, New Hampshire, which for those of you that know nothing about the geography of the Northeast, Henniker, New Hampshire is kind of on the western side of New Hampshire, just along the border with Vermont. And my dad worked in Henniker, so I would like drop drop him off at work and then go ride at Pat's Peak and then pick him up and we'd go home like afterwards. And I just had these fond memories like rolling back through me after seeing that you used to ride there, because nobody else ever talks about that particular location in New Hampshire. Like it's always Loon or like Waterville Valley or whatever. Like you never hear Pat's Peak at all.
Yeah, I love Pat's so much. I like try and get there at least once a year. Yeah, my cousin, I went as a chaperone for his school once. They gave me a free lift ticket if I chaperoned, which was basically just riding with them, and that's kind of how I like discovered it. And I fell in love with it. They also have like the least amount of restrictions for uphilling, so like love to split board there. You can bring your dog like all day. Like there's no a lot of places you can split with your dog before the lifts start spinning or after, but you can do it while people are riding down the mountain. And so, yeah, I love it. I'll fight for Pat's Peak till I die.
I'm jealous you still go. When I moved to Pennsylvania, so I went to college in Pennsylvania. I'm a little bit older than you. So I left New Hampshire in 99 to go to college. And like, I've probably ridden 10 times since then, because I don't know, like the skiing and snowboarding in Pennsylvania, and then now I live in Maryland. It's just not the same to me. So for me to pay like $100 for a lift ticket to go ride what would be a bunny hill from where I grew up, I know I just have to get over my own ego, but like it's just different, right? Like, and I just have not been able to get into it and find the same time. So I'm very jealous you still make that work for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, I think like I totally get that. Unfortunately, like living near the mountains is tough for anyone. I think a lot of people wish they could like live at the base of Waterville Valley, the base of Vale, the base of Park City. But the reality is like, if you just adjust your expectations, which is like something I struggled with at first, but once you do, like you're going to have the best time of your life.
I remember the last time that I went was probably just pre-pandemic, so like 2019. I went with some friends and I was like, guys, I haven't used my snowboard in like, I don't know, 7-8 years at this point. And they were like, all right, we'll go slow. We'll start slow. I mean, first run, I was already going circles around all of them. I'm like, you guys go every week? What's wrong? Like, I was like, I guess I still got it. I guess you don't, what is the saying? If you don't use it, you lose it. I guess it's not the case with snowboarding.
Yeah.
I like to say I was never really much of a tricks guy. I was always fascinated by those that would put their life on the line to land tricks, but that was never my thing. I just like to find the longest like hill or longest run and just go and just take my time and enjoy the back and forth and being outside. That was my sort of vibe on the mountains. Were you more of an adventure person, an excitement person, or were you just like, I just like to ride?
I don't know a ton of tricks. Like you can probably count them on like two hands. But I definitely like to hit the terrain park when I can. I definitely stay away from like any crazy kink rails or like 70-foot jumps. I definitely don't drop in on those. In my 30s. So it's funny. Even like if you talk to the pros. Like I was talking to Louis Vito, who just rode in the Olympics for the X Games. He's 37. He's like, man, I'm sick of hucking myself next to a 17-year-old who like can fall hard and get right back up. Like I'm not moving the same. And I don't know. I love it all. Like I dabble in the backcountry. I like to split board. I like to bomb steep hills. I like to cruise super mellow. It just kind of depends on the day and like the crowd and the skier or the resort, wherever you're at,
So the reason I wanted to talk to you, Josh, is because I saw this piece you did for Snowboarder Magazine. The piece was titled Opinion, The Olympic Slopestyle Women Deserve Better. And we're going to dive into a little bit about why they deserve better and what happened. But one thing I just want to mention before we get into it, I was laughing so hard. I know there's been a shift for many years in the tricks getting bigger, the spins getting bigger, everything. But I just was laughing watching the Olympics this year when they were talking about how you can't win a competition without like a 1440 in your back pocket or whatever. When I was in high school, a video game came out called 1080 Snowboarding. And the reason it was called 1080 is because no one had even thought a 1080 was humanly possible by a snowboarder. And here we are. I mean, obviously 20, 30 years later, but still we're talking about 1440s, I mean, it's just insane the numbers that are getting thrown around to me now, given where we came from so many years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. Red Gerard, like just 8 years ago, won Olympic gold. And I'm pretty sure his highest spin was a 1280, or sorry, 1260. I'm always terrible with the math.
I know, same. I'm like, did I say the right numbers? I hope I did. Someone's gonna like write me a letter.
No, you're good. You're definitely good. But yeah, now like in the women's side, like Kokomo Morase is like putting down 16s, and that's like only 8 years. Like it's at a really, really crazy place. I was just at the Snow League in Aspen this past weekend, and like they gave an award out for the highest air. Kaishu Hirano, brother of Ayumu Hirano, who's probably one of the best halfpipe riders ever, went over 25 feet. Like he went over the the marker, which is really crazy. After Kaishu, the highest air was like 18 feet,
Mm.
and Brooke DeHunt, who's only like 20 years old for the woman, she was almost at 15 feet, and so like the progression has been crazy lately.
I find it really interesting, and I know there's physics involved here, but I don't view the women and male snowboarders to be that different in size. Like when we talk about male snowboarders, we're not talking about like NBA size dudes. Like we're talking about pretty average guys. And the women are so strong and they're so talented that I find it interesting sometimes watching these events like the half pipe or even slopestyle, where the difference in air is so different, right? Like when you're seeing someone like the women might get 10 feet less. And I'm like, but I guess I can't wrap my head around why, because they're obviously so incredibly talented. The physics, I guess, just escapes me. And I cannot understand why they don't get the same level out of these jumps.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like a big thing to keep in mind, like snowboarding, much like many sports, has been like male dominated
Sure.
for a while. Like if you talk to Shannon Dundowning, who's one of the first women ever, she talks about trying to ride the big air jump like at the X Games or other contests and being told no. Why can't I?
Mm.
Because I'm not in the contest? No, because you're a woman, and like a lot of riders just have had to, like any scenario, overcome like a lack of resources, maybe like some stigma behind that and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, I can't really project like too far in the future, but I do think like there's going to be contests, I don't know, in like 15 years where the men and the women are going the same height out of the pipe and the spins are pretty close, or they're one rotation under the other. You know what I mean? I mean, it's already getting to like such a crazy point. And like Jamie Anderson, one of the best slopestyle riders ever, before they had men's and women's knuckle huck at the X Games, she just competed in the men's contest once. It's not out of the ordinary. Like that very well could happen sometime down the line in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think level wise, the women and men are right there. I mean, I think sometimes an extra spin just comes down to how high you get, So if there's a way to find that extra, dose of speed and get that air that you need, I mean, they really could be competing on the same exact level. The talent is there for sure.
There's so many different aspects of snowboarding, and like the cool thing is like there's really no, until we get into contests, like there's no distinction, right?
Yeah.
There's no split at all between the men and the woman. And if you're going to the backcountry with 4 or 5 people, like it doesn't matter,
Oh yeah.
what gender they are, and one person's going to be able to read your line just as well as you are. So I think that's like one of the coolest things about it.
So let's talk about slopestyle. Okay, we're going to talk particularly about the women's slopestyle event at the Olympics that we just saw happen a few weeks ago. Explain what slopestyle is in case people listening are not familiar with this particular contest.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, like if you were to go into a terrain park, ride it top to bottom, that is like the origins of slope style. So you're gonna have some rails in there. You're gonna have a couple of jumps, and the goal is to put the whole run together as best as possible. Do the best tricks on and off to the rails, show a lot of variability, and then do your best 3 tricks on the jump section. And like it's really hard to do your best 3 tricks in a row for no matter what the discipline is. That's why you see a lot of times like a rider setting themselves up with like a switch 540 when they can spin to a 1400, but it's
Mhm.
like, well, they landed their previous trick switch, now they have to get back to their dominant side. And it's kind of like asking Chris Sale to like pitch. I think he's a lefty, right? So pitch with his right hand.
Yeah,
If he's not, then my bad. But it's essentially
I
the
think
same.
you're
And
right.
like the only like, I mean, we have switch hitters in baseball, but like no other sport really asks anyone to do that. No one's asking Patrick Mahomes to throw with his less dominant hand. And so like judges like to see difficulty onto the rail. They like to see difficulty coming off the rail. They like to see some sort of cohesion with your run. So not just kind of throwing whatever comes to mind, but really like entering with a plan. And then they want to see the most difficult or most progressive tricks on the jump section. So a lot of times that means the most spins. The core of snowboarding kind of disagrees with it because a lot of times it doesn't look that great,
Mhm.
honestly. Hiroto Ogiwara from Japan last year did the first ever 23 40. He did it again this year. A lot of people don't like that. A lot of people think it's not stylish. It's not what snowboarding is about. There's something to be said. A lot of riders also don't like that, but that's what's been like continuously rewarded by judges. So, as long as judges are rewarding it, like riders are going to practice that way, and countries are going to fund riders to practice that. And in my opinion, like I think traditionally I've liked slopestyle the best. Rails riding is like kind of the core of snowboarding. Like we won't even get into the street side of snowboarding, but that's like a really big part of it. And rail tricks, to make them look good and crisp, is like one of the hardest things to do on a board. It's a fan favorite for sure. And yeah, we can get into it, but this year's contest left like a little bit on the table in a lot of people's opinion.
I know it's hard. Like, so this year's terrain was set up, I think it was 3 rails, then 3 jumps, or maybe it was 4 rails, then 3 jumps. I forget exactly how it was. I was watching it, and this is my old man yelling at cloud moment, but like I was watching it and I was like, to me, slopestyle is a variety of things throughout the entire event. So I love seeing 3 tricks nailed back to back to back. But you got to keep your speed up. So you can't even mix anything into the middle, right? Like I thought it'd be cool to have like 2 rails, a jump, then a rail, then 2 jumps. Like I thought it'd be cool to mix it up a little bit. But from the perspective of you're trying to hit your biggest tricks, you got to keep that speed, and a rail would completely knock out all of your speed as you're going.
Yeah, and I think there's also the possibility of like getting too much speed and not being able to land your rails.
Sure.
As dangerous as it is to like land off of a 40-foot jump or a 60-foot jump, it's like even more dangerous to like land off of something into metal, you know?
That's fair. So this year we had the women's slopestyle event, and there was a weather issue in Italy during the event. So it had to be pushed back a little bit, and they went just directly after the men. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. When you're going to the resort, right, like a powder day is the best possible scenario.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for contest snowboarding, that's rarely ever the case, right? Like unless it's a backcountry contest like Natural Selection Tour. You know, it snowed heavily during the women's halfpipe final, and that affected if you are ever out there on the slopes on powder day, you're going to know everyone's got Garmin's and Apple Watches these days, you're going to go slower, right?
Sure.
Part of that is because like you're enjoying the fresh powder, but another part of that is because like there's a reason the ice coast, like it goes firm, it's firm and fast, right? Like you're going to go faster if there's less stuff to catch your board, more stuff to dig your edge into. And so when it is snowing, like it slows everything down. The women's contest, you know, I'm not an organizer, but the Olympics are unfortunately at the mercy of like a broadcast schedule.
Yeah.
And, you know, they deemed it for whatever reason okay for the women to compete. And like some riders who are the best in the world, like didn't land certain runs. Some couldn't even put a single run down. Others were like relying on their safety runs, which is just never going to score that well, especially a lot of these judges do the same events, whether it's Olympics or not. There's a history of the women not necessarily getting the same treatment as the men, and even more so to that, there's a deep history of snowboarding not getting the same kind of treatment as like skiing and
Sure.
some of those disciplines. To see like some of the best snowboarders in the world during half pipe, like not be able to put a run down because it's pelting snow and they're losing speed, which makes them have to work a little harder to like throw those rotations around, meaning it throws them off balance and it's harder to land. Also, just like visibility, it's really hard to see. You know, I think one of the announcers said it's like Star Wars when you're in the Millennium Falcon and the stars are just coming at you. You know,
I remember hearing that and laughing very hard on my end.
You know, that already went so poorly. Then it kept snowing, delayed the slopestyle contest, and having to go right after the men. You know, the men's were already scheduled for that day, so you know, their schedule didn't necessarily change, but I think a lot of the men would also say that the course was not up to par and had like a lot of work that needed to be done.
Let's talk about, before you move on, let's talk about why going after the men is an important thing to distinguish here. Because I don't know if a lot of people that are not avid snowboarders or skiers, or they don't watch these events on a regular basis, maybe they don't understand how the course changes as people go. So these events generally are put on different days, like I forget the exact days, but say the women were supposed to go on Tuesday, the men would go on Wednesday. That way they have time to kind of not change the course, but go through and groom it, make sure it's all good. There's no bumps or divots in different places. So now you're taking the women and putting them right after the men, after they've already torn the thing apart. And that's really where I think some of the problems begin.
Totally. And you know, I think a lot of people were frustrated with the build of the course in the first place. You know, a lot of times for these events, they'll bring in the best course builders in the world. Well, Italy, it's kind of a national pride thing. They want to bring the best course builder in Italy out. And, you know, there's some talk about other things that might have made it harder for that course builder to really put the right course down. But people were saying the jumps weren't quite big enough. The distance between rails wasn't necessarily the best. And so, yeah, getting back to your point about like going directly after the men, it's like if you play hockey, it's like the same thing as playing a youth game, right? Where like you're not doing the ice in between periods because you don't have the time, but it's going to be choppy. The puck might take a weird bounce. There might be ruts in the ice that disrupt how you're skating, versus like a high school or college game, or especially the pros where they're resurfacing the ice in between. You know, it's just like it gets chewed up. There's a lot of action. And so there's a lot of like grooves and ruts are already in there. And it's like if you go to this resort at like 9 a.m. on a Tuesday versus someone who gets there at 11.
The first run is always the best. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just tough. Like you can groom it at night and let it set overnight, but you can't do that with like 2 hours in between. And honestly, I don't even think the break in between the two were that long.
Yeah, and then you got the sun too. I mean, you've got a lot of combinations of things as you get later into the day that can change the way the snow feels. I always thought it was interesting, like watching slalom, for example, right? Like Michaela Schifrin, we're talking about skiing for a second, but in the slalom, she won the gold in her event. And she had to go last because she qualified first. Like she had the best time going into the second run. So she got to go last. And I'm like, I don't think that's a benefit. Like you're going last. Everybody else has already torn this course to shreds. Now, thankfully, she's as talented as she is. And she came down and she won that gold. But like, I'm looking at the course. I mean, there's huge bumps around every single gate they have to go through. Going last after 20 people go is not ideal to me anyway. I don't know. Watching it on TV, it does not appear to be ideal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely, that can be a disadvantage for sure. And I think sometimes you see problems arise with that. I do think like the mental side of knowing exactly what you need to do.
Fair enough.
Right? Yep. Like if you're not so much in ski racing, right? Like you're going to race your fastest no matter what, almost always. But let's say it's in the Olympics for like half pipe and slopestyle, your finals run the best of 3 wins, right? So if you're sitting at like an 89 and you're going last, and everyone else before you, has put down whatever, all of a sudden someone leapfrogs you, they get a 91. It's like, okay, I know exactly what I have to do. Like they just did this rotation. They put down a 16. I probably also need to put down a 16. And I think for the viewers, it adds like to an element of drama too, but it's easy for us to say we're not hooking ourselves off of a huge booter 5.5 times.
That is definitely fair. So I remember watching the Slopestyle event as a fan on my couch and thinking like, wow, I'm surprised they're not landing more of their jumps. Like I'm surprised they're having as many issues on these tricks because these are the best snowboarders in the world at this craft. You would think they'd be nailing these things. Now, of course, it's go big or go home, right? You got to score those points. But there were a lot of falls, a lot of slips on things that I would imagine to be routine. And then I read your article and I was like, okay, so I wasn't crazy. Like it felt like there was something going on here.
Yeah, definitely. And I look like I don't mean any disrespect to the course builders or anyone of the riders or any coaches, anything like that. I think like the really unfortunate thing at the end of the day, the Olympics is a television show.
Yeah.
I think there's just a lot less leeway. The IOC is always like butted heads with the ski and snowboard communities. There's just like a lot of opposing viewpoints and look like they kind of do what they have to do. They're running like the biggest operation every 4 years or every 2 years, But a lot of these riders, they had their runs planned out. They kind of knew what they needed to do to project themselves into the top slots. And like the course wasn't really agreeing with them. It's like if I'm going to go out there and it's going to be super icy, like I might be trying to go faster, but I'm probably not going to try something that like would send me upside down and give me a greater risk of like not landing because I'm going to crash hard, right? But like I'm just riding for fun. If your future career and like a medal is on the line, then you don't really have a choice. Like you kind of have to try and put down what you've put down. And these riders have gone through their runs like over and and over again. They've watched film on them. They have an A and a B and sometimes a C run, like all circumstantial. And so I look at someone like Jess Perlmutter who finished in 6th. She's only 16 years old. It's an incredible story, but like she was putting down a run that no one else was at all, and her rails were impeccable, like better than anyone's. And there's a real possibility if she had not fallen, like she could have popped on the podium. Like probably not, now that we know what Zoe was able to put down in her 3rd run and what Kokomo put down in her 3rd run. But like before that happened, like there was a very good possibility she could find herself on the podium, at least for a little bit. And the course was slow, and she fell on, I think, her second to last trick. Like you said, it was a routine trick for her, but given the circumstances, it just wasn't able to be put down.
So slopestyle, like a lot of snowboarding events, is judged by judges. Like the people that get to decide who goes into 1st, 2nd, 3rd place, these are judges, you get a score. I would think that knowing the circumstances had changed, knowing the course was not maybe at its peak, understanding people were struggling, I would think the judges would adjust their scoring to fit the minute that they were in. Now, maybe that was not the case in Italy.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't. So I had an interesting weekend in which I met the judges that judged the the Olympic slopestyle contests and got to talk to them about the story I wrote and how I was a little bit
Had
critical.
They seen it?
They had, and
they like, forget this guy. I'm not talking to him.
No, they were super nice, and they really like walked me through. Like, I think the bottom line is I didn't know a damn thing about judging, even though I think I might, and I think unfortunately that is like the majority of people, and including a lot of broadcasters, broadcasters from like multiple countries. A couple of the judges told me that they were getting texts from fellow judging friends who knew the
Mm.
broadcasters personally, who had to kind of like they were on air very critical, and then afterward they talked to them and they were like, oh, I understand this now. I think for me, what I didn't necessarily understand is that the way it is judged, where you're going trick by trick, feature by feature, and you're weighting them all equally, that can't just be changed willy-nilly,
Mm.
because this is a formula that like the Federal International or Federation for International Skiers and the IOC, and more importantly, like the riders and their coaches, that they've all sat down and they've all talked about this, and they've all said, yes, like we want it to be judged this way.
Yeah.
And that's because there's a lot of riders who can't spin a 1620, but their rail tricks are flawless. And you can, no matter how much snowboarding you watch like 2 or 3 days of Olympics, and you're going to notice like Taiga Hasegawa, the men's slopestyle silver medalist, like unbelievable, big air, big jumps. One of the most stylish guys who can make a spin of like really, really, really high number, look really good and look really stylish. He falls off rails
Mhm.
like pretty easily, pretty early on. He didn't podium in the X Games for that exact reason. He can make up for it. Each rider has their strengths and weaknesses, but it's like there's a reason it's slope style. It's because you have to complete the entire course, and that's something that I didn't know going into it. Obviously, I wrote about that, and after hearing the judges talk about it and hearing about why they score it the way they score it, I realized like, hand up, my bad. But also, I think like, and this is not the judges' fault themselves. I think it's the IOC and the broadcast team. Like, why don't I know that, right? Like, I do this for a living. I cover it for a living. And why is it not made more obvious as to why? And to everyone at home, a lot of people who don't pay attention to snowboarding until it's the winter of the Olympic year, And I just think like we know why the US beat Canada in hockey. It's because they scored more goals than the other
Yeah.
team,
Yeah. Judging is always
we
hard.
know, yeah. And we know, even with figure skating, like
Mhm.
the announcers were breaking down kind of step by step why Alyssa Liu was able to win with her, even though like maybe the trick selection wasn't as difficult as others. It's like, we know that. I don't follow figure skating, but I know that. Why don't we get that in snowboarding? Why don't we get that in freestyle skiing? And I think that's like maybe where we need to focus a little bit more, myself included, attention.
I mean, I guess it makes sense that you have to sort of assign a point number to every trick prior to the event, so you kind of have a basis and all the athletes know what to kind of expect. But at the same time, when I'm watching this from home, it feels like everybody. So the slopestyle event, you get 3 runs, and your best score from the 3 runs is your final score. The first run for everyone, even if they don't fall, tends to be a little bit lower. And I heard one of the announcers this year talk about how the first run is where the judges are getting their bearings on what they're maybe going to see today, and it gives them an idea of like where they can put their scores. So even in that comment, it sounds so arbitrary to us at home, where you're like, all right, well, we just want to feel it out first, and then we'll start giving numbers out to people. Like, no, I want like a hardcore number of like you walk into McDonald's, you know how much everything costs. Like, I want to know from the judges, this is what a 1440 is. This is what a 1080 is. Like, I want to know exactly what it is before the event starts.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I think like, I mean, in particular, selfishly, I like wanting Red Gerard to take home another medal, or at least like come closer to the podium than he did. And he wasn't able to land his last 2 runs. And that's super frustrating. But I will say, like, these riders all know these judges, because once again, they do like this whole circuit.
Yeah.
I think if you know that that's probably going to be the case, and you have to drop third, because like Red finished, I think actually he dropped second, but like, he put his first run down. And then I think, unfortunately, like, there might just be a little bit of strategy to it. Like, maybe put down your C run just to get a number down, and
Yeah.
then put your B run down in your second run. Hopefully you can land it. And maybe a couple other people fall, and that puts you in a really good position. And maybe they don't. And then you have to pull out the A run. And if you don't land it, well, that's on you. But it's super frustrating. I mean, Red and Ollie Martin, as like a biased American, I think Ollie, it definitely should have been a little higher up there than he was. And he finished 4th in big air, and so obviously he had the tricks and the style that he brought, and the judges liked it in one contest, and they didn't deem it necessarily good enough. But there's a lot of things too that are just tough for us to watch on the broadcast. Like,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, like, I want to go on record. The X Games has an AI judging system.
Oh.
Personally, as a snowboarder, I am not a fan. They use it to like reinforce human judges' opinions. Right now, I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that one day they might try and use it, but that's like purely speculation. But
$100 a day for a judge is gonna be too much for ESPN. They can't they can't
yeah,
foot that
yeah, I
bill.
actually found that it's 125. I
Okay,
found out.
125.
Yeah, and but you know what? Like that AI model judged the Winter Olympics women's slopestyle, and basically they said that even though Kokomo's jump section was unbelievable, she came off a little less than half a second, 0.37 seconds off the rails too early, and like that's enough. Like
Yeah.
the judges with their criteria that they put down, but like I did not necessarily catch that. It didn't seem like she came off that early, you know. Zoe came off a little bit early too on one of her runs, and it didn't seem like that big of a deal. But half a point and half a point and half a point, like they all add up. And Zoe, I think, lost by less than half a point. And so,
Mm.
like, you know, a couple small errors here and there, and it's the difference between the masses being excited and people calling for your jobs, unfortunately, but like in a misguided, misplaced way.
So where do we go from here? I mean, it sounds like we just have to take this event, eat it, and just move on to the next thing. But you were talking to judges. I didn't know that going into this conversation, so now I'm intrigued. Was there any part of your conversation where you guys discussed how do we make this better next time? How do we navigate should this weather issue come up again? How do we navigate this problem?
Look, I just came from the Snow League. That is a one event, 2-day contest. When they add free skiing, which half the events this year have free skiing, it's still only the half pipe. It's really easy to like get it right when you only have one thing to worry about. Obviously, the Olympics have a bajillion things to worry about, but like the Snow League like listens to its riders. At the end of each day, at each contest, they're like sitting down there in riders meetings, asking what they liked, what they didn't like. They're catering the course to like what the riders ask for. You know, I think like look, it wasn't just snowboarding and skiing. Like we all heard about the woes of the hockey rink and how delayed that construction was. And like, I think like Charles Beckinsale is the best park builder in the world. I believe he's Australian. So it's not like I'm trying to bring in a US guy. Like he's not from the US, but he is universally the best. He built the Rockstar Energy open course in Breckenridge. He designs the US preseason or early season training courses. He did the X Games. Like he's done other countries' courses. Other countries come to the US to train on their courses.
Yeah.
Like, I think you just need to make sure you get, at least if he doesn't build the course, you need to have him on a couple phone calls. Talk to other people outside of your little bubble as far, because like, you know, no disrespect to Italy, but I think they had 2 riders in slopestyle. Like I think you really should include a lot more people just to get like a difference in opinion. I think like you need to put the riders first. Like the Olympics is a TV show. When you have like Red Gerard landing one of his 3 runs, like he's one of the best snowboarders like period on this earth, and he's not landing, and that's a worse TV product. And so I think they just need to think of like, you need to put the best product out there. Otherwise, like you're doing a disservice to everyone. The athletes who spend so much time training, you know, like it's not, a lot of riders like don't get as nearly as much money as you think for making this Olympic team. Like they could make more money exploring other avenues, but like there's a competitive edge to it. There's like a legacy aspect to it. There's like, you know, for sure, like a fun factor, being able to represent your country. Red was like really excited to have his family back over there. You know, his family was over there, but he was 17. He couldn't fully like enjoy it when it was in Russia, and then 2022, or sorry, Korea. Then in 2022, like the COVID Olympics, like no family was over there, and he was really mostly excited about like bringing his parents and his siblings over, and you know, like that's a big draw for a lot of people. And anyway, you just want those people to be able to compete like at the best of their ability, and like you're doing everybody a disservice if you don't, you know?
Yeah, you mentioned TV a couple of times, and as we've been talking, I've been kind of thinking about that. I know the Olympics are a TV program, but you would think they'd want the best product, right? Like you would think, I know they're trying to fit it in because they've got, well, if we lose Slopestyle on a Tuesday, whatever day it was, if we lose it on a Tuesday, we try to put it on Thursday, that's not going to work because we have something else on Thursday. I mean, Slopestyle was one of the last snowboarding events, if I'm not mistaken. So the snowboard course was open. They could have moved it. And I can't imagine that it would have hurt ratings. It probably would have only bettered them if they had some really kick-ass moments to highlight on NBC all day, because most people are watching the recap version of the Olympics at night. They're not watching the live events the same way. So if you've got, 15 to 20 minutes of just really amazing runs you can put on that recap special at night, that to me will be more worth it than putting a bunch of falls and, well, here's the best run we got, And I don't want to diminish the women that did land their tricks. I mean, they all did an amazing job in general, but like they probably could have done a better job. We could have seen bigger stuff if they had just sucked it up and said, okay, we're moving to the next day.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I opened my story with it, the story you've been referencing, but like a Norman door is like a door that is supposed to operate a certain way, and because of the design of the door, like you're pushing it instead of pulling it, right? You can think that the riders should have done better and should have put down more runs, but like if you have that many riders falling and not like completing their runs top to bottom, then it's not the riders' fault. Like
Yeah.
it's the course's fault, it's the conditions' fault, and like anyone who's already going to watch snowboarding is like there's nothing convenient about this. Like it's on at 5 in the morning.
Right.
So I think people aren't going to be like, oh, it got pushed to Wednesday at 6 in the morning. I can't watch it now. Like if you're going to watch, you're going to still watch. They did use the course for skiing after,
That's fair.
and that could have something to do with the scheduling. But like, I mean, I agree. Like, I don't know. You just want to put the best product out there, right?
For the average sports fan, the average person who watches the Olympics, gets really psyched about snowboarding, then forgets about it for 4 years, what is the next thing that maybe we can be excited for or looking forward to watch? Are there any big events coming up that will be televised, that people will be hyped about?
Yeah. The Snow League, the hat I'm wearing.
Okay.
I just came back from their Aspen stop. It's a half pipe only league. It is awesome. There is where the Olympics 30 make it. And if you don't land your first 2 runs, like too bad, you're out. Well, this is like a little bit more bracket style. And so you have a couple different heats. The top person in each heat moves on to the finals day, and then you have a last chance qualifier. So you could not land any of your first 3 runs, but then you go to the last chance qualifier and you put something down perfectly, and all of a sudden you thought you were going home, but now you're in for the finals day. Anyway, that's going to go to Locks, Switzerland on March 19th. I think it's the 19th through the 21st. That's really awesome. Like you should tune into that. It's on NBC. It's streaming on Peacock. You can stream this past weekend's contest, which was in Aspen. You can stream that on Peacock. It was incredible. Maddie Mastro came in second. She was unable to put down a run in the Olympics, and that really ate her up. And normally, like she'd go a couple of years without being able to fight back or redeem herself.
Mhm.
And in this case, she had to wait like 2 weeks,
Right.
which is like super rare and super awesome. And now she kind of has that weight off of her shoulders, and she can like just go ride and go train, and there's no like looming pressure. It's the best 2 out of 3. So like the 2 riders who were in the finals, like they were also in the finals last year. It's by Sean White, right? Like it's his half pipe league. And so there's a lot of stipulations. Ryusei Yamada and Yuto Tatsuka, they're 2 Japanese riders. They won bronze and gold in the Olympics. They both have the same exact trick. It's a switch backside double alley 1280, and so they wanted to go trick for trick. So instead of putting down a whole run, they rode down half the half pipe, did that one trick. One landed, he went huge. The other didn't. He fell on the landing. That's one heat right there. It's like having stopping the middle of a baseball game and being like, we're just going to do home run derby real quick. It's like there's no other sport like that.
Yeah.
And so I would say watch that March 19th. And if you like really have caught the snowboarding bug and you're like, I'm all in, I want to go in on this, YouTube is your friend, right? Like if half pipe, you fell in love with half pipe, there's a ton of half pipe riders putting out good content. If you fell in love with Slopestyle, well, like you're going to love street snowboarding. And I can shout out a couple projects, but honestly, if you go to Holden Barth's YouTube page, he works in the snowboarding industry. He's kind of like the go-to source. He compiles all these different playlists, and you can find them from each year going back to like the early 2000s.
Wow.
And he'll curate like a vibe. He's very dedicated on it. But yeah, I mean, there's so many good projects put out every single year. If I had to recommend one, it's called Heaven. It's by Finnish rider Rene Renekongas. He was at the Olympics, didn't qualify for finals, but he is one of my favorite riders. And it's a crazy project. Go check it out. Those are different. They're not contests, but when you have more than 3 runs to put down a trick, you can have some pretty unbelievable tricks. And so that is where I would leave that. Just go give it a watch.
Josh Sullivan, if people want to follow more about what you do, follow your work, where should they go to check it out?
Snowboarder Mag. It's actually snowboarder.com. That's it. Real simple. You can follow me on Instagram, jsully27. You can follow the mag at Instagram, Snowboarder Mag. I'm kind of one social media channel, and life is for the better that way. So yeah, I guess you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want, but I don't really check that either.
I love that. You're the first person, and I think 170 something episodes of this show, you're the first person to drop a LinkedIn in the conversation. I love it, Josh, man. Hey, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you for the work. I've been a snowboarder since I was 15 years old, so it goes back 30 years for me now. And I don't do it nearly as much as I would like to do it, but I get so amped up around these big moments like X Games and Olympics. I get so amped up for it that I'm so happy to be able to have this chance to talk to you about it for a little bit here on the show. So Josh, thank you for your time, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And to that, I would say you don't have to be on the mountain like 10, 20, 30 days a year to be a snowboarder. Like if you snowboard twice a year, you're a snowboarder. Watch the projects, watch the contests. Like when's the last time anyone played like tackle football, but like millions of people tune in every Sunday. And I think like we need to squash that kind of part of the sport and open it wide up. Like if you snowboard once a year, you're a snowboarder. If you snowboard every other year, you're a snowboarder. I mean, go as much as you can for sure, but come on in.
I love your attitude, Josh. Big thank you to Josh Sullivan for his time. You can find his work through Snowboarder Magazine. I think he gives great coverage of the sport, honestly, but I may be biased because I like the dude. And thank you to all of you for listening to this show. I appreciate you sharing some of your day with the Adult Education Podcast. Until next time, be well.